manhood.neat podcast. I think we're getting worse. I think it's been 4 weeks now since our last one. Like, we went and bragged about doing a couple on time, and it's just been a downhill slope since then. But it's good to be back either way. Mr. D-Watt, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's the Lord's way of just keeping us humble, man. That's all it is. And it's been such a trying time. Like, we haven't even really talked outside of this. Like,
No. A few text messages
you've been
about it.
at work. Like, we should. Yeah, and it was like a proof of life. Like, hey, bro, are you good? Yeah, man, just busy. Like, same thing. We exchanged pictures last weekend. I think I was in Tennessee on the west side of Tennessee, and you were somewhere close to the house. I think you was telling me you were on the Dragon, right?
Yeah. Yep. Did the Dragon.
Yeah.
I actually did the Dragon 2 weeks in a row. Kind of worked out well, nice. So
Nice.
Nate came up, a few weeks ago, and we rode for 2 days in the rain. But did the Dragon, the Share Hall, and stuff around here. But then we actually went west and rode, and there's a park called Fall Creek Falls State Park in Tennessee, which is over near Spencer, Tennessee. It is the tallest free-falling waterfall this side of the Mississippi River. So it's 275 feet. Definitely put it on your list of places to go. Like, there's a lake there. It's a beautiful park. It's real well kept. There's cabins. There's a lodge, all kinds of stuff. But it's not like you look up at a falls. It's actually a 275-foot gorge. So you're like on the top watching it fall down, and then it's a half-mile hike down to the bottom. And this gorge has its own microclimate, like, because it's down in this big hole, and it's the only virgin native timber left in the southeast United States.
That's wild. How far is that from your house?
2.5 hours, 2 hours.
Okay. Yeah. I learned a lot about the state of Tennessee. So our ultimate end destination was Nashville, because we had tickets to go see the Savannah Bananas. That was Ashley's Mother's Day thing. Good night. Tennessee is just a really long state.
It is.
Like, we went from Chattanooga to Lynchburg to Nashville, and then spent the night in Nashville or whatever, and then got up and drove back Sunday morning. I didn't think we were ever going to make it home.
And you're only halfway across the state.
Exactly. And the fact that Memphis is another 4 hours from Nashville is crazy.
Yeah. Now, it doesn't take very long to get from, say, Chattanooga to Kentucky. That's a pretty short trip. But yeah, going east-west is a trip for sure.
It's wild, dude. Yeah. So,
but yeah,
man, we had a good time. Mother's Day was good, and work's been busy, and my oldest daughter is done with school, so I officially have a senior in the house, which is interesting for Ashley and I. And I called my mama the other day to tell her about it, and she teared up on the phone. She's like, "It's just my baby," So it's kind of a new stage for us, and because we're out of time with her, Aaron. Like, it's just, these moments are precious, So trying to navigate that, and then just, I can't, and I really have a confession. I've been unfaithful to destiny. And the free time that I have had, I've been playing this new game called Expedition. It's called Clair Obscure Expedition 33. I know you've been playing it because we've talked about it via text message, but I can't put it down.
Dude, it's
I'm so engaged and just invested in this game. At one point in this game, I got emotional. I'm just so invested in the story.
The storytelling is phenomenal. And
oh my gosh, man.
Normally in RPGs, I'm all about side missions and hey, let me go do this and just grinding to power up. More than once, I'd get to a boss fight and be like, "Crap, I gotta turn around and go grind for a little while because I'm not ready for this," because I was just pushing the storyline.
Yeah, the story's so good, and I'll tell you the other thing. The story is usually I can kind of figure out what's going to happen next. I'm still at a point in the story where I'm not sure what's going to happen next.
And you're in the epilogue, right?
I am. Yes, I've beaten the boss.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure if I'm not going to see her again. There's just one guy I know in the game, Renoir. I don't know if I'm going to see him again. I have no idea how they're going to wrap this up, but it is beautifully done. Game of the year. And it might be the best video game I've ever played.
Ooh, that's out there to say that last part. I agree with the game of the year so far.
Yeah.
I will say that it is the most entertaining storyline I've played since Mass Effect.
Okay. Yeah, and I know you're a Mass Effect guy,
Yeah,
so
I'm a
that's gonna be
huge,
hard.
and so it's hard to beat that. But it's so much faster, right? Like Mass Effect is, like the story is like as intricate, if not just a tad more, but it's spread over 3 games. This is one game, right? And like, and I don't like in Mass Effect 1 that you're not going to have resolution because there's 2 more games. We knew it was a trilogy from the onset. We have no idea if there's a second one of these games coming out. There's no, so I'm assuming the story is going to somehow wrap up.
Yeah.
But like you, I'm a little ways into the epilogue, and I'm like, dude, they're still bringing out new stuff. Like, what's going on?
I know it.
So
I know it. So, anyways, that's what I've been up to, man. Can't stop playing it. Just trying to just spend as much time with my oldest as I can, and then, again, life is just, man, we've just both been busy. So how about you? How about your end? I know Nate was there, but everything else?
Nate was here. Then the following week, my buddy OJ, who lived in the same little town of like 300 people in Nebraska, after I moved here, he moved down to Florida, but he was up, and so last weekend he was here. And originally, him and his wife were going to come. He's got a daughter who threw for South Carolina, for University of South Carolina. And so
USC junior.
Yeah, so she went up there. They went up there for her last track meet. Watch her throw.
Okay.
She's a senior there, and so they were going to ride over. Well, they're like, "Oh, it's going to be raining every day." So his wife's like, "I'm going to ride back with my dad back to Florida. You have fun in the rain." But so he came over, but we actually had a pretty good day of riding. But
awesome.
But because he was here and his wife wasn't, Liz is like, well, since I'm going to go down to Georgia and be with my mom for Mother's Day. So they rolled out. So last Sunday, I was basically by myself. They came back one day. So,
well, that makes sense. As it was Mother's Day weekend, I sent you a picture of the Lynchburg city limit sign because we went to Jack Daniel's and did like a distillery tour, and you were like, "Cool, I'm on the Dragon," and I'm thinking it's Mother's Day. Why is he riding the Dragon? But okay, that makes sense now.
No, so here's the crazy story though. Before we move into popping this bottle, so did you heard about the earthquake in Tennessee over here, right?
Because I texted you about it. Yeah.
So it was a 4.1, and like I looked it up, and we felt it. We were 5 miles from the epicenter, riding on our way to the Dragon on 129. And so, like, I'm riding, and like I see the trees in front of me kind of shaking, and all of a sudden my bike's just like across, like kind of zigzagged across the road, and then it was done. I thought it was a microburst, like just weird wind kick, or something. That's all it felt like. And then we get it to the Dragon, which is the first place you have signal. And we rode the Dragon, ended up at the Crot there, and I'm like, I get these like, "Are you guys okay? How is it up on the mountain? How's this?" I'm like, "What's going on?" And sure enough, it was the earthquake, whatever. And so I got to cross riding my motorcycle through an earthquake off the old bucket list.
What an oddly specific, thing to put on your list. But kudos to you for, creating a checklist and completing it.
That's right.
That's hilarious, man. That's hilarious. So, all right, cool. Well, again, sorry that the listener had to listen to 2 friends catch up, but like literally, this is the first time we've had a chance to talk. So you're gonna have to deal with our nerdiness and our friendship. So sorry about that. We'll move on. You have a whiskey.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Weird. I know things are really weird in this episode. I actually chose a whiskey for a change. We have Old Dominick Cask Strength is what we're going to be sipping on. Since even though I chose it, you're the researcher here, so I'll go ahead and let you tell the backstory on this a little bit.
Yeah, Old Dominick is a relatively new company. I think it was 2017, 2018. They moved into a old building in Memphis, Tennessee, and started making whiskey. They did start physically making whiskey, but the whiskey that they sold, they got from MGP. So, which is kind of standard in bourbon right now. And after a couple of years, they had enough of their own stuff to make it to where they could sell, show enough their stuff. So, I believe this is considered, and it should say on the bottle, this is considered a Tennessee whiskey. Is that correct?
It just says straight bourbon. It says straight bourbon whiskey on it.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe not then. So Well, it may not be a Tennessee whiskey because I think a Tennessee whiskey has to go through the Lincoln County process,
Correct.
which is, where they drop it through all the maple. So, don't have an age. Is there an age statement on there?
Yes, 6 years.
6 years. Nice. So that's good. Nice little, that's a good age, I think. Mash bill should be 52% corn, 44% rye, and 4% malted barley, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. So
it's aged in Tennessee white oak, and this is 124.31 on the proofing. This is a cask strength, and so for the Iowanians, for Josh Heupel, for those in Tuscaloosa, and anybody that celebrates the Buffaloes, the Colorado Buffaloes, that would be 62.16%.
Oh man, golly, what a just absolute circus that NFL draft was, huh?
Oh yeah, yep.
Oh gosh. Okay. Anyways, the color is fantastic.
Oh yeah, you've already poured yours. Let me pop this bottle and pour mine here.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. Well, I hope it sounded better on wax because it didn't sound very good. How long's that bottle been open? It's relatively new though, right? Yeah, it ain't got much left in it.
No, I shared some of this with Nate and with OJ and stuff. So
sure.
But honestly, like the cork has been, let me see, synthetic. Yeah, it's a synthetic cork. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we'll move on then to, like you said, it is a very dark caramel color.
Yeah, I love the color.
It's got a little bit of oily property too. It's not super. It doesn't stick to the glass big time, but it sticks a little.
I'm just getting a ton of like rye spice, like mint and rye. I can't get past it. Now, granted, mine's been sitting in a glass, kind of airing out. I'm so weary of a neck pour now after the Neely family distillery. I want it to have all of the air,
Yeah,
so maybe I've gone overboard.
I did not send you the neck pour either, just FYI.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No, I definitely smell the rye. I mean, the rye's there, but
Okay.
I get the brown sugar. I get a little your bacon spices, your nutmeg, clove.
Are you getting? I'm starting to get some like vanilla cream cheese frosting, like some sugar. Are you getting anything like that? But I also gave mine like a little swirl too.
Yeah, I do get the vanilla.
Yeah.
Do you get dark cherry at all?
No, I can't. The mint and the rye spice is just, I don't know why. It's just, I can't get past it.
I got you. All right, well, cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
What do you think?
It's definitely a high rye. Like I can taste that off the rip.
I think
I do get some sweetness.
Do you think it is oilier, has more of an oily mouthfeel than the glass would make you believe?
I think it's less. I think the glass leads me to believe that it's gonna be a little more oily. It's not very oily. It's kind of left my mouth dry. But it's I mean it's good. It's like I said, I can definitely tell it's a high rye. I get some sweetness on the palate, like some sugary sweetness. I get a lot of oak, surprisingly enough. And it's not like an oak bomb. It's just a sweet oak. It's nice. It's very sweet, really, really sweet, kind of like on the finish,
Yeah. So to me, it's kind of like backwards from what I normally think of. Like I get the earth tones up front and then the sweetness trailing as opposed to the opposite, so I get that tobacco, leathery, earthy, like, bitterness. I don't know if bitterness is the right word, but I'm talking about that kind of earthy flavors on the initial with the rye spice, and then as it settles, I get that creamy sugar.
Right. Yeah.
I think the finish is I get the oak, and then that to me that cherry that I hinted on the nose, I get it in the finish. Yeah. And then the rye clove or mint or whatever you want to call it kind of lingers with it. But to me, it's a medium finish.
Yeah, I definitely get the clove and stuff on the finish. Yeah, I definitely get that. That was that's a good pickup. I think the finish is again, yeah, I'm with you. It's pretty medium. But it's I mean it's a nice pour of whiskey. I really like it. Um, it's just I can't. And I don't maybe I don't know. Maybe I just haven't. I'm trying to not. I'm trying to kind of like have more days in between the days that I do drink. You know what I mean? Like have some more dry days than normal. And I don't know. I haven't had whiskey in a couple days, so I don't know. Maybe that's what's throwing it off. I don't know, but it's good. I like it.
All right. So, what are you going to throw out for a score on this?
Hmm. I think that I think I'm probably going to be like at a 60.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a little lower than I am.
Okay.
I was actually at a 68.
Okay.
So I actually quite like this.
Yeah.
So it's a 64 average for the, I don't know if your math skills are better than Josh Heupel's, but just wanted to, but
No, they're not. I'm glad you said that. I was feverishly trying to add on my phone.
But so now the kicker is this is a value bottle.
Okay.
So
Really?
yes, $57.99.
I would not.
Yep.
Okay, so it's on the cusp. I would not with and I'll give you my thoughts on why I would not think it would be, because it's a smaller distillery. They don't have a ton of distillate. It's 6 years old, and they're sending out cask strength bourbon, which means that they don't have as much. They're not watering it down, so it kind of. I would definitely expecting it to be more than that.
This is only $2 more than the bottled and bond.
Okay.
So I have not
And
had the bottled and bond yet. I haven't had it yet.
No,
but
I haven't. It's supposed to be really good though.
So, and I do know the bottled and bond is also a different mash bill.
Okay.
So again, we'll have to get it on the docket for, one of the next ones. So, all right.
Do you have something in mind
for the
next whiskey?
Yeah, we have a sponsored bottle for the next one.
Oh, okay.
Did Nate not stop by your place yet? Nate?
No, he didn't.
Nathan, okay, so it's the Four Roses special recipe for one of the special recipes for the year, the OESK.
Okay.
So he's got a 2 ounce, or actually 2 ounces for you.
Nice
on that. So yeah.
Does that mean we could put one of the 4 ounces in our infinity bottle if he's got?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
So, all right. So we got to go to the value score though. So $57.99.
Yes.
So for me, for value, I'm gonna give this a 75 on the value score.
Okay.
It's a cask strength, so that's got that working for it. Pricing to me is very good on that for cask strength, and to me it's a good bourbon. So it's not a like, oh my gosh, this should be $150 type thing, but I think that it hits below its price point. Like you said, it's a micro distillery. For the most part, I've seen in my store it's pretty available. I don't go to any other store, so I don't know how it is in other places. But I do know that they've got limited distribution.
Okay.
And so for that, and yeah, it's a 6-year-old cask strength for $58. So so that's where I'm at 75.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna be at a 70. Again, I like it. And the more that I've like kind of drank it or whatever, like I really get a really, really sweet finish. And I think it's a good value, when we talk about, almost $60 cask strength whiskey, some of that stuff's kind of hard to find. I mean, you're going to, you'll have some Maker's Mark, Wild Turkey Rare Breed. In some places you can get a Jack Daniel's, cask strength or barrel proof, kind of depending on where you are, so yeah, I think this is good. So 70 will be mine. So what is that? It's
72.5.
72.5 for the value.
So
do it.
I would say it's, pretty solid 64 score and a 72.5 value score. It's pretty decent.
Yeah. What, say the score again? 70 what?
72.5.
72.5. All right, cool. Yeah, I mean, and if you look back at our score, I mean, that puts it, if we're just going to go off a straight score, I mean, that puts it in with the Master's Keep, the Basil Hayden Frey Ranch, and Heaven's Door cask drink. So, right there with some other really nice whiskey.
Yeah. All right.
So, cool.
All right. Well, before we move on to the topic du jour, if you'd like to support our podcast, best way to do that, again, is just to share it with a buddy. You can follow us on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. You can always subscribe or follow, whatever, and you can rate and review if your podcast platform has that. That helps. Leave a comment, a written review. That's good. If you want to reach out to us, manhood.neat@gmail.com, manhood.neat@gmail.com. We are on Instagram and X at manhood.neat, and we are on YouTube, which is Manhood Neat Podcast on the old YouTube. Again, that's still just audio, but it's just another way you can find us. And it's an easy place to comment on if you want to leave a comment on an episode or something, that's a good place to do that. We're looking for reviews of anything that we have covered. So if you drink something that we've covered and you want to shoot us what you would score it at, whether it's your value score, what you'd pay for it, or just an overall score, we will start aggregating that stuff. And when we get enough submissions into like a master list, so that would be cool. But anyways, so DWAT, this topic is probably something we should have maybe started with way back when. I know that it's been something in my personal church life that has come up as an issue from time to time.
Yep.
And so we're just going to kind of hit it from our point of view, trying to back it up with scripture the best we can. And hopefully we do this. We've asked the Lord to speak through us on this, and that we'd have kind of clear vision on what it is how we're supposed to approach this. But the question is, should Christians drink alcohol? And I'm sure the listeners I already know the answer, what they're going to say, because they literally just got done tasting bourbon. So, so it's probably not going to be real far outside the ballpark on what we're going to answer on this, but maybe we can back it up to why we feel that way. So the first question is not should, but my first question is, can Christians drink alcohol? Because should and can are two different questions. So, can Christians drink alcohol? My answer was yes. What about you, D-Watt?
Yeah, same thing. Yes.
Yes. I've got
I grew up with a very different, fault on that. Coming up, I grew up with, Christians don't drink alcohol. They don't drink, they don't cuss, they don't smoke. They don't have sex till they're married, right? So, it took me definitely some of my own study and some wise counsel and that kind of stuff to really come to a place where I can understand, and we're going to go over some scripture tonight, but kind of understand what the scripture says and kind of the point and the insights and the intent behind it. So that was not always my point of view on that. So
now we'll say I do agree that Christians are not supposed to have sex until they're married. Like that part of it.
Yeah. No. I'm tracking on that. So I'm talking about the alcohol thing.
Yeah. Just because we're going to, maybe fight against one of those caveats, it does not mean we're fighting against all of them. But I got Ephesians 5:15-19 is my first verse here. It says, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best of the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit, addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody to the Lord with your heart." Do you have any other verses you want to throw into the can Christians drink alcohol?
No, I kind of took your verses and made some notes.
Okay.
So, I think this is a great verse. And I think you really have to look at, what Paul is trying to tell the people at Ephesus. It's pretty clear that he draws it's clear that he has some pretty clear contrast between being drunk with wine and being filled with the Spirit, right? And so the other thing is they reference wine a lot. That's just because that was the alcohol of the day, right? So you could put in there beer, wine, distilled spirits, whatever. So don't get hung up on the wording there. So yeah, Paul's pretty clear about that. He uses the word drunkenness, and if you go back and kind of look it up, I did some digging on what exactly the context when he was using that word, and it basically is just where they talk about reckless behavior, just kind of being wild. So pretty much what we now consider, somebody's drunk, right? And then I think the other thing, and this to me and in my notes will kind of be a theme for the rest of the episode, is the passage is not about total abstinence, but it's about avoiding excess and focusing on being filled with the Spirit and not so much being filled with an excessive amount of alcohol. So again, the emphasis for me is going to be on self-control and wisdom. Alcohol is not condemned and inherently, but being intoxicated is. So
yep.
We need to be intoxicated with the Spirit, not necessarily with distilled spirits, if you will.
Right.
So.
Yep. And I will say, and a lot of times people, when they talk about this, the first thing they'll bring up is, well, Jesus made wine. And then you'll hear arguments by teetotalers, well, wine was different back then. And, and so it's a pretty easy way to no, it wasn't, is like wine is still fermented, right? Like we don't distill wine, we ferment wine. And so, but I've never seen anybody get drunk on grape juice. And so the fact that there's warnings against stuff, and you can even talk about like Noah, like he had shame because he was drunk on wine, which is how, thousands of years before Christ. So, let's not, that's a silly argument to say, well, it wasn't really wine. No, it was. And Jesus drank wine with with the disciples many times and stuff. And so it's definitely that we're here talking about is drunkenness because of the overuse of alcohol. So my next question then is, okay, and we know that Paul says that all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial.
Right.
And so my next question then is, should Christians drink alcohol?
Yeah.
Okay, we've already, do we have the right to or the ability to? Yes. So should we, right? And so my first point here is moderation versus abstinence. Like what is, because we all agree that we're not supposed to be drunkards. We're not supposed to get drunk. And so the opposite of that would be drinking in moderation or responsibly, whatever word you want to use, versus just complete abstinence. And I've got Titus 2:2-3 here. I say, older men are to be sober-minded, dignified, self-controlled, sound in faith, in love, and steadfast. Older women likewise are to be reverent in behavior, not slanderers or slaves to much wine. They are to teach what is good. So you got the sober-minded and not to be enslaved by too much wine, right? So here we're talking about this. So again, there's no call for totally abstaining. And we see that, but we do definitely see a call for moderation.
Yeah.
But it's not wrong not to drink, right? So that abstaining from alcohol is not sinful. But what do you think should we err on the side of moderation, or should we strive for abstinence?
Yeah. I mean, I think because I've seen it both ways, right? So I've seen, I know several people that are sober, and I know their stories, and I've seen, and I know the story where it was like they had that first, dad let them they were 12 and he let them have a sip of the first beer, right? And it flipped a switch for some people, right? For some people, it kind of became more of a dependence thing. It was like, yeah, I can do this. And then it just became more and more of a crutch. So I think whatever you need to seek the Holy Spirit's guidance on that. You need to go to God and go, Father, what do you have for me here? Because God is active, right? He's in our relationships. He's, and the more that you respond to him and you're in his word and you're, doing these, what I call holy habits, right? To kind of have this routine where, you can hear and feel where God's trying to lead you. I think it's perfectly acceptable to lean on the Father for that answer, so it's kind of both. When I turned 21, my dad like pulled me aside and was like, kind of like most fathers do, probably, I would assume, if you've had too much to drink, you need to call me. This is, of course, before Uber. And he was like, look, you need to be careful. He was like, you come from a long, long line of alcoholics. And he said, it's in you and you got to be able to manage it. And if you get to where you can't manage it, he said, I need to be your first phone call. And I said, yes, sir. So, a little bit of A, a little bit of B, I guess. But I think to transition to your verse, I think that Paul is trying to get, leaders and mature believers to be an example with their lives. For Ashley and I know you and Liz as well, like y'all take this very seriously. We see our marriage as a ministry. We know that people watch what we do, and it's not that we're trying to give you this Facebook front, but we're just super intentional about the way we communicate, the way we love each other, the way like physically, we touch each other in public, we're just very intentional about it. And alcohol falls under this as well. Like when we have a lot of people over, I really don't have that much to drink. Like I may have like one drink, but I really want to be an example of like, I don't necessarily have to have something to drink, or if I just have one, everybody knows I've had one and I can just put it down, So that's kind of where my brain went when I was reading that. Ultimately, the phrase slave to much wine, that implies a loss of control and a dependence. And our dependence needs to be on Jesus Christ, not a bottle. And we're talking about alcohol, but really you could substitute that for food, for porn, for,
caffeine,
whatever,
yeah.
Gossip. Yeah. I mean, whatever. Right. But we're just going to use alcohol, right? That's our context tonight. So, your dependence needs to be on Jesus, not the brown water or Miller Lite or whatever, So again, moderate use isn't condemned here, but addiction and misuse is. So I think as mature believers, we should model temperance in this and really just make sure that, no substance kind of rules us. So,
yep. And I would say, if it is true that if you just say, you know what, I don't want to have to worry about it being an issue, so I'm not going to ever drink of it. Makes total logical sense, right? Like if you, it's a very, and I've got, there's other things that could become sins that some people might do that for. Like, hey, whether it be TV, right? Like I don't know what the boundary is between wholesome, like movies that are, like wholesome, that are encouraging, and then there's stuff that's just entertainment, and then there's stuff that's we don't need to have in our minds. I don't want to have to worry about figuring that out, so I'm just not going to watch movies. Okay,
that's right.
And so I don't have an issue with that. And the same thing with abstinence from alcohol. Like I don't want to have to worry about being worried about have I had too much, am I becoming dependent on all this stuff. So I'm just going to stay away from it, period, because I want to honor the Lord with all parts of my life. And so if I know it's like, I'm just going to cut this out. I'm not going to even worry about it. And I know I'm honoring God by not going too far. Awesome. No issue with that whatsoever. The flip side of that is when it becomes legalism. And so it's like, look at me. Like I'm more holy because I don't do A or I don't do B.
Right.
I don't listen to music with bad music or music with bad language. I don't watch movies that have, death and war scenes, or I don't drink at all. Look, I'm better than you because of that. And if you don't meet the same criteria, you can't be part of this group, right? And so that's the spirit behind what we do things, or the motivation behind it on either side, right? Is where God's worried. So, or where God comes to play. So, like, if we are, I'm not going to do this because I don't want to slip up and make him and dishonor my father. Okay, cool. But if it's, I'm not going to do this because I'm told I have to, or because I'm going to be holier than thou, it's bad motivation, right?
Or I'm a liar. Right.
Yeah.
And I do have a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that when it comes to like looking at moderation versus abstinence, both are what's the motivation of the heart behind it. If your motivation of the heart is like, I really probably shouldn't drink at all because I know that I could easily fall. I have an addictive personality, and like I get addicted to things real easy. But I don't want to look stupid in front of my friends, so I'm gonna try to handle it. Like that's not the right motivation, right? And so I think that you gotta look at your motivation. So then my question is though, let's say you decide, hey, like I think I can handle it. I'm not gonna, and I'm gonna, whatever. And so, and I just, like if they made alcohol-free bourbon that tastes the same, that'd be my jam, right? You know what I mean? But I like the way it tastes. I like the idea that this bourbon will only taste this way today. If I pop this bottle tomorrow, it'll taste slightly different. In the science behind it, I kind of get into that. So there's that. And so, but then, all right. So if I decide, hey, you know what, I'm gonna sip on the brown water from time to time. Well, when and where is it appropriate? It's gonna be the next question, right? As a believer. So I'm gonna start with being around, and I left out a point on my outline here, DWAT, but it'll make sense. Okay. So first is we're around fellow believers who are teetotalers, and if Josh Heupel's listening to this, because I assume rest of our listeners are intelligent, but if Josh Heupel's listening to it, I'll explain what a teetotaler is. A teetotaler is someone who says that Christians are like, it is verboten to look at, sell, work in an establishment that sells or produces alcohol in any way, shape, or form. So it's 100% cut off, right? So that's what a teetotaler is. So if you're around fellow believers who are those, how should we handle that situation? Do you what?
Well, I thought a teetotaler was something else.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have learned something today. I always thought a teetotaler was somebody who just got teetotal drunk.
No. A teetotaler is.
So wait a second now. I need some. So a teetotaler is somebody who never drinks.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they call it a teetotaler then?
I don't know. That's what it's called. So you and Josh Heupel have two things in common today. Maybe God's humbling you. Do you what?
Dadgummit.
But no, a teetotaler is someone who is 100% against. It is verboten, right? Like alcohol in any way, shape, or form is verboten. Yeah. So it's our.
I guess. I mean, if that. I mean, I don't need alcohol to have a good time, and so if it's that serious for somebody, then like, okay, like, sure, like we don't have to have alcohol, like I don't have a problem with it. I know some people, I feel like they could make a problem, try to make it a bigger deal than it needs to be. And I think ultimately it just comes down to like respecting people's wishes, I mean, we go back to like somebody being sober, like if I know somebody's sober and they're, not necessarily like, maybe they're only been sober like, 18 weeks, right? Like, I don't need to bring a bottle of whiskey or any like beers or Happy Dads or White Claws to their house. We'll just drink sweet tea, or I can bring some sparkling water, like I think it just is going to be, situational in that regard. But ultimately, I think we just need to respect our fellow believers' wishes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I always like to, of course, this is because I always like to have just a little bit of a dig in all my reasons, right? But I always say it's kind of like eating meat eating meat that was sacrificed to idols. And Paul says, if the weaker brother has a problem with it, don't do it in front of him. So I always use this for the same thing. But yeah, if I've got a fellow, a brother or sister in Christ who's a teetotaler, or chooses to abstain, I'm not going to drink in front of them or talk about, not that I'm going to hide it. And if they ask me like, hey, Aaron, do you drink bourbon? Yeah, I'm not going to lie, but I'm not going to. Right. There's no point to have it be a point of contention between us. So I'll just, this doesn't need to come up, doesn't need to be there, doesn't need to be around, and so, especially if it's going to be a stumbling block for them, and so where that becomes sticky, that's real easy when it's a church environment, and you're with your, you're with them. But where it gets different is you're in a mixed group, somewhere. Let's say you're at some type of town function and there's a beer garden, and you see people that you fellowship with or know that are teetotalers. It's probably not the time to go in the beer garden and hang out with your buddies. I mean, you can go in there and hang out with them, but and it's Yeah, and just showing courtesy to those people. And where I would say that again, everything can go too far, it would be like if you start making like a hidden thing you do at your house, right? Like nobody needs to know about this. Well, now you've got an issue. And so I think it should be something like, hey, for instance, I go to a church that's got a lot of teetotalers in it. It's not a hidden fact that I do a bourbon podcast, right?
Okay.
But I don't walk in and say, hey, it'd be great this Sunday mornings if we could review this bourbon together and then start the sermon. So
you fellas had any Old Dominick?
That's right. Yeah. So, but I think that, wisdom and discernment, right? What's a constant prayer, wisdom and discernment. But I do think that we should be respectful and don't have to do the dig that, hey, I'll cater to the weaker brother. Like, probably don't need to add that part.
Yeah. Well, and I go back to Titus, man. Like, it's such a great verse. Older men are to be sober-minded, dignified, self-controlled, sound in faith, in love, and in steadfastness.
Not
dignified.
Well, a lot of us are steadfastness too.
Steadfastness, yeah. But yeah, I think that's where it comes back to. Paul has given us some instructions here on that we need to be able to be an example of conduct in our conduct, with our conduct is what I'm trying to say. When Paul's not asking us to be perfect. But we need to have the ability and the kind of foresight. Again, I reference, our marriage. We see that as a ministry. Like, there are certain things that we are not going to do in front of other like younger couples. So yeah, I think the Titus verse was really good.
All right. So the second part of this, which I forgot to put in here, but is when we're around unbelievers, how do we need to handle moderation?
I think it needs to be moderate. I think that, your life and the way you live it, whether you see it as a ministry or not, it is, and if people know you're a Christian, like they're going to look at you through that context, and so I think that, I think you have to be just aware of that, and that people are going to watch and they're going to go, oh, well, this guy's a Christian, but he's over here doing, X, Y, Z. It's the same thing with alcohol, like maybe you have a drink, maybe you don't, like I think would be prudent to definitely ask the Father, like, hey, what do I need to do here? Like, give me some guidance here, Pops, like that kind of thing. I think, yeah. So I think it just lands on moderation.
Yeah. And where here's just an example from this past week, right? So when I onboarded with the company I'm with, back in January 18th, 23, it was me and one other guy. He was a project manager, right? He was like assistant project manager or something like that for the expansion of the plant, right? So him and I onboarded at the same time. Well, the project is done. And so for 6 months, he's getting ready to, because we're not starting our next major construction project, which is kind of his deal.
Right.
We had no work for him for 6 months. And so he's going to go go work for another contract for 6 months with the hopes that we're ready for our next big project. And then he'll come back to the company, which I hope he does. He's a good guy. But we had a little we called it a temporary going away party for him on Friday. So those of us who either knew him or worked with him, kind of middle management type stuff, we met down by the lake, had a little barbecue, just hung out, beer was there type thing. And so I had a beer, I was sitting there hanging out, talking with him. But when it's time to, we were about an hour out from getting ready to roll, and it was low. It's not like people are drunk. We've been there for 2 hours. Everybody's had one or two beers. But I'm like, like when another guy I work with who's getting ready to crack open another one, I'm like, dude, we gotta roll out of here in like 30, 40 minutes. Like, gotta drive. Like, probably don't need to be cracking that open, And he just looked at me for a second and he's like, oh yeah, man, you're right, and just dumped it out and threw it away. And I don't know if he went back to the beer cooler just a second, because I left like 5 minutes later, and got another one. But I think that when we are like, we need to it's okay to express moderation to our, you know what I mean? And not now, it's not to be like, I'm gonna take this out of your hand and beat you over the head with it type thing. But like, it's okay. Just like if I've got a friend who's talking about who's a non-believer he's got marital stuff going on, and he's like, man, easiest thing would be just to get divorced and move on. Like my advice is not going to be to do that, right? My advice is going to be like, man, no, like marriage is a covenant. Like you need to like get some counseling, get some help. Like you need to try to work this out. Right. And I don't think that when we're drinking around non-believers that we should back away from advising on how we would scripturally to a fellow believer who's drinking, right? Now, again, we don't beat them over the head with it because it's a different discipline to fellow believers, and witnessing to non-believers is different, but we don't change what we're saying. We might change how we say it, but we don't change what we're saying, because truth is truth. And so, I think that this is the harder part, is when we're in environments with non-believers where alcohol is presented, to say, like, you got to have a little backbone, and you've got more credence if you were there having that first beer with them, right?
Sure.
And you're like, hey, man, like we gotta temper this a little bit. And they might blow you off, they blow you off. But I think that we do have the responsibility to be salt and light to the world. And that involves big things with like theology and Christ and this, but it's also just everyday practical things. And so that's kind of where I fall on that. Do you think I'm too preachy or?
No, I mean, I think, there is no, I think you're on track, and we're definitely on the same thought. I mean, there is no cookie cutter, black and white. This isn't a binary thing. It's going to be different from time to time, from person to person, from event to event, and like, that's just how it is, So, my ultimate thing would be, go to the Father, like ask for the Holy Spirit's wisdom, ask for discernment, really lean into that, that side of things, and say, is this where I need to be, or is this not where I need to be, So, yeah, I agree.
Okay. So moving on then is, these are kind of funny, but are there blessings in alcohol? Like, if all things are created for the glory of God, are there blessings involved in the consumption of alcohol?
Yeah, I've never thought about alcohol being a blessing. Of course, I know the verse about all things are made good, are made for good. So this is kind of a new thought for me. But you gave some like verses. And so I thought they were really good. The first one that you gave was Amos 9:14.
No, I will restore the first one I gave is Ecclesiastes 9:7.
Oh, I went past it. Yep. Ecclesiastes 9:7. Go eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved what you do. So we know that Ecclesiastes is wisdom literature, and that encourages gratitude and enjoyment under God's provision. That's pretty clear here. And I think if you really, again, we cherry pick verses, but we've said it in the past, you really need to read kind of before the verse and after the verse to get a real context of what's going on. But, this verse really is part of a broader celebration of kind of life's simple pleasures. So go eat and drink and enjoy time, with a merry heart, right? To quote Dave Matthews, eat, drink, and be merry, right? Yeah. Like, for tomorrow we die. So I think here is that these verses again were good because I'd never really looked at them in the context of alcohol being a good thing. But I mean, the wine here is seen to be enjoyed. It's a gift. And I think that's unique. There's no condemnation. It's only encouragement to live with joy and live rightly before God. So in the context of this Ecclesiastes verse, I would say yes, that it is a blessing. It's a good thing.
Yep. So
and there's more obviously with the other verses.
Yeah.
I have other thoughts.
So on Ecclesiastes, what I was kind of thinking here is, like wine was the drink at the end of the day, right? And so you've done your work, you've done this, you're sitting, you're with your family, you're enjoying the Lord together. Maybe you had your devotion and all this kind of stuff. It's a joyous occasion, right? And so like, to me, like the nightcap, right, is a joyous event. And so it's like another day. Hopefully you've done great things for the Lord, or he's taught you things. You've been with your family. You've enjoyed the gifts he's given you. and you're just, I mean, it sounds cliche, but the wind down of the day is, to me, is joyous, right? And so you look back at the things you've, physically done, work wise, stuff that's gone in your family. Another day you got to enjoy with them, and so it's just a joyous occasion. And so that's kind of where I was looking at with that, is just that it can be just a simple joy of the day, and you're just kind of you're having a special drink to commemorate that, right? To give it back to the Lord. So the next one then I have is celebration, which is the Amos 9:14.
Okay, sorry. So I'll read that now that we're on Amos. I will restore the fortunes of my people Israel, and they shall rebuild the ruined cities and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and drink their wine, and they shall make gardens and eat their fruit. My thoughts on this is prophetic. This is God, and this is ultimately Amos. It's saying this is what's going to happen. Again, the wine here is shown as a good thing. It's peace, it's prosperity. The fact that things are going to be so good that they can plant vineyards and grow grapes. Like, we're not going to be at war. We're not going to have to worry about, are we going to lose our sons and our husbands and fathers, right? Like we're in such a good spot that we can plant vineyards and grow grapes and make wine, So again, this verse is just very unique. I've never thought about it like this. And again, the wine is associated with celebration, abundance, restoration of life. And just like with Ecclesiastes, it's not presented as dangerous, but as it's something good in its proper place.
Right.
So
and
love that.
I'd move that forward too. That you can go to, we'll go back to the Christ making wine. That was in a time of celebration, right? And so I mean, Jewish weddings were a multi-day event. We're getting towards the end of the celebration. They run out of wine, and Christ makes more. And then people are like, wow, this is the best stuff. And so again, it's a time of celebration. So it's not that the wine makes it celebratory. It's that you're holding it special for that. And so I think that's another thing too, is like the times of celebration, like to, again, just to hold something special, like even like feasts, right? You talk about the feasts through the Bible. Wine's always involved. Special food is involved. Like God has given us these things to. We're not supposed to eat the fattiest, gnarliest, like unhealthy food all the time. But God doesn't say it's wrong to, but to do it in moderation, and He uses celebration as a time for it. And I think that wine fits that same caveat, or alcohol fits that same caveat. It is something that we set apart for celebrations, and joyous occasions. And so I think we see that in Amos, Ecclesiastes. We see that throughout the Bible, when even up to, even though the Last Supper is a heavy moment, it's a joyous moment looking at the celebration of Christ overcoming death. And moving forward through communion, that's what the wine was for. It was to commemorate and to celebrate Christ and His atonement.
Yep.
And then my last one on here is, are there actually any health benefits to alcohol? And I've got 1 Timothy 5:23 is a little thing here. Do you have that pulled up?
Yeah, no. 1 Timothy 5:23. No longer drink only water, but use a little wine for the sake of your stomach and for the frequent ailments. So Paul's right to Timothy here to drink a little wine for some medicinal purposes. We know that wine was used for all types of, digestive and health issues. So again, it's moderate, it's purposeful. There's no abstinence here, which I find unique. And again, it just kind of counters any notion that, total abstinence is a command for all believers, is what I took from this, is that certain people are going to be called to that, and certain people need that in their life, especially if they're sober, that kind of thing. But like, one of the guys that I worked with at the sheriff's office, he was a narcotics investigator, and he doesn't drink alcohol because for years he was always on call. He could never drink alcohol. And so now he's been sober, and I use that kind of in quotes, like hasn't had any alcohol for so many years. Like, he doesn't even like how it tastes. That's just not his jam,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And nowhere in this are we saying that you should force your kids to have a taste for alcohol, right? Like, so, no, that's not at all.
Yeah.
So let's say that you decide, hey, and again, if you decide to be a teetotaler and abstain from it, I'd say I have no issue with someone who abstains. The teetotaler where you're like, I will not associate with anybody that does. That's where I kind of got a rub point. But let's say that you decide, you know what, I'm gonna use alcohol in moderation. I think there's 3 things that are steps to kind of safeguard yourself, and that is, one is boundaries. So this is going to be quantities, types.
Sure.
The second thing you need to pay attention to is situations, and the third thing is places. So basic boundaries, like it might just be a pour limit, right? And you say, you know what, the most that I'm going to allow myself to have, so I don't throw it out of whack, is 2 days a week, and only a single drink per situation. I'm just throwing out arbitrary stuff. I don't, it could be more than that, it could be less. But I think that it is important to give yourself like kind of a defined boundary, because if you're going to go off the fuzzy chin, like, oh, I will only drink till my chin gets fuzzy. That the reason I throw that out, that was my original thing, is sometimes if you're, like you might start off the night with some, water, 80 proof bourbon, and someone brings you some cash strength, and you're like, oh, I've only had 3 drinks, and normally I have 4. Over this course. Well, you've just changed the difference here. So by the time my chin goes fuzzy, the time that the rest of it works in my system, I got an issue. So I think that it's very important to set yourself some kind of pretty rigid boundaries, that you're like, okay, this is what I allow, and this is where I'm going to go. You got any thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I think, I think setting boundaries, and the thing is, like, so if you set some boundaries, like, you can't lie to yourself, and go, oh, well, I'm only going to do this one thing, and then be like, well, I had a really good day, so I'm going to reward myself, So, like, I think that's, if you're to that point, you might need to get some help. The thing that I landed on, and as we kind of like head towards kind of wrapping it up, but like the thing is that I landed on is know your why. Like, why are you drinking in this situation, and what do you want it to do for you? Right. So if you're drinking to escape stress or sadness or loneliness, or you're bored, or you're using it to fit in socially, or just to like numb your emotions, like that might be a problem, and so that would be my thing to kind of caution the listener, is why, like, taking it just like a pause and say, hey, why am I doing this?
Yep. And that kind of goes to the whole situation and places thing, just to kind of wrap this all up. Situationally, is, should I be having alcohol in the situation? Like for me, if I'm in a really public place, I don't drink. That's just me personally, because I need to be.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't trust crowds. I don't trust the world, so I need to make sure I have all my faculties about me.
That's right.
You never know when you're gonna have to skedaddle.
Yeah.
And so
which is why you also should always wear shoes with laces, men.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
anyway,
how do you feel about like Tevas? Because I can run pretty good in some Tevas.
Yeah, no, I'm down with Tevas.
Okay.
Yeah, or Chacos, I'm good with those.
And or
some Jesus sandals.
Should you always have your Crocs in 4-wheel drive?
Of course.
Yeah.
You gotta strap up the hey dudes as well.
That's right. But no, I say situations. The other situations would be is who's looking at me, type thing. Who's here? Am I furthering the kingdom here, or am I going to possibly cause somebody to stumble? And then same thing with places. That kind of goes back to places is part of situations, but is this the correct place?
Yeah.
So like probably at the if your buddies are drinking at the little league ball game, it's probably not the right place for you to join in with them. So
yeah, that's right.
But there's just stuff like that. So just basically, you've got to be cognitive all the time. And so we're never supposed to give up control of our mind, and that's the whole problem with drunkenness, is you give up that control. And so before you even would start, you just think of, am I outside of my boundaries? Is this situation a good situation for me? Because to say that having a drink has no effect on you, I don't care if it's just one, is bogus. I don't care who you are, how big you are. There's always, it might be that the effect changes based on those parameters, but there's always something there. And then the last thing is is this the right place? My closing thought just kind of wraps into yours is, what's the purpose behind it? What is the outcome you're looking for? And honestly, if your answer, like, I just like the taste of bourbon, right? And so 99% of the time, if I'm at my house hanging out with my family and I pour myself a drink, it's because I like the way it tastes, and so that's the start and the stop of it. Now I still have to understand the effects of it and all that. But if I'm not trying to be cool, not whatever. So I think that we have to keep those things in mind. And honestly, just ask the Lord, like, hey, if you're calling me to not do this for whatever reasons, then you have to listen, And so it's, we're not our own. We're bought with a price. So,
and I guess, maybe challenge yourself to some dry days, weeks, or months. I did like a dry January. That was good. It was good, healthy for my body, but also it was good to be able to show myself, like, I don't, as much as I like the way it tastes, like, I don't need it, So, because ultimately, alcohol can never do or give you what Christ can,
right?
Christ gives us joy. He gives us peace. He gives us courage, and a lot of people look at these boundaries that are set, whether internally or externally. It's not legalism, man. It's just there. It's part of discipleship. It's part of discipline and being and doing what God has called you to do. They keep you with who God made you to be. So we shouldn't be turning to alcohol. We should be turning to the Lord.
Right.
When it gets outside of moderation. So.
Yep. I guess one last little caveat. So my wife comes from a teetotaler family, right?
Okay.
And I grew up in a family where that was not the case. Like, I don't remember a time my parents never, occasionally having a drink. And so it was an issue when we first got married, and I don't mean it wasn't like a fight issue, but it was just say, hey, she always leered on the side of, oh, you had a pour a couple of nights in a row. Like, do you have a problem?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I was just with my brother, and unfortunately that, he's a bad influence, and
he's the problem.
He's the problem. Yeah. But no, and so we just made an agreement, and that at any given day through our marriage, and it's happened, sometimes, that she'll be like, hey, for the next 30 days, nothing. Okay. And if I ever say, no, I'm not going to do that, now we got a problem. Right.
Yeah.
And so, that's just been like a standing thing. And so, especially if you're married and you got a spouse who maybe differs on views and stuff, like, you got to show them that they're more important,
Yeah.
And so
that's right.
But yeah, so that's, there's a lot of different ways you can go about setting these boundaries. And so for me, like, I've got boundaries I set, and then my wife's got boundaries, and we work off that. But, anyways, well, listener, we thank you for hanging out with us and talking about this kind of stuff and listening. If you got any questions, again, just reach out at manhood.neat@gmail.com. And Mr. DeWatt, do you want to close us in prayer, and we'll let him go?
Yeah. Father, thank you for our time tonight. Thank you for our listeners, and just thank you that you do want us to have joy. You want us to be able to celebrate the wonderful things that you have given us. But we know that we need to celebrate those in moderation, Father. We focused on alcohol tonight, but we know that really it could be substituted for numerous things. We just pray that our listeners would be able to enjoy whatever their thing is in moderation. Father, we just pray for wisdom for them. We pray that if it is an issue for them, that you would make a way, that you would, Holy Spirit would intervene, someone in their life would intervene that would help them realize that they're turning to a bottle, or they're turning to something other than you. We just ask that you would, again, just be with our listeners, be with these men and women that listen to the podcast, Father, that you would speak to them boldly, speak to them loudly. And we just ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right. We appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you next time on the Manhood Neat podcast. Hey, if you get get bored and you want to do a little multiplayer, hit me up because there's a new season of the finals and we still got Titanfall 2 going on.
Okay. I'm fixing to go cook dinner and then I'll be on.
All right, man. Sounds good. I'll catch you later.
All right.